I live in North Carolina now. I grew up in North Carolina. I never thought that I would come back to North Carolina to live, and here I am, and I love it. Let's see, I've been writing for my whole life. My first book was published in, oh my gosh, 2017 now, I want to say. Yeah, that sounds about right. And it was called The Ethan I Was Before, and I've been lucky enough to publish 5 more books since then, and the latest one is The Mending Summer, which came out in May.
So lots of questions for you about how fast you're writing to get so many books out in such a short period of time, and high quality books. I very much enjoyed The Mending Summer, and I've got all kinds of questions about that. But I had seen that your mother was the first person to teach you about storytelling and writing. So I always like to start with, where do writers form? I don't know if that's where this particular writer formed, or if it happened before that. When did you form?
Yeah, so I mean, partially I think it was just in my DNA. I remember dictating stories to my mom before I could even spell my name. But she certainly nourished that in me and made me see it as something that was really an important part of my identity. We used to play this game, particularly when we would go visit my extended family. And I was the youngest kid, and I wasn't like the other kids in my family. They were all really athletic, and there's kind of a sarcastic sense of humor in our family that is fun now, but when I was 4, it wasn't so much. So when we were at these gatherings and I was feeling a little bit out of place, my mom would take me out to this hammock in my grandparents' yard, and we would lay there, and she would ask me to give her any 3 things. So people, places, toys, animals, plants, just anything that I had in my head at that moment. And I would list 3 things off for her, and she would take a minute and think about them, and then she would come up with a story for them. And that was really formative for me in understanding story structure and understanding that a story is never just about one thing, and the magic in stories is really about the connections that you find between the elements in your story. So it was really, it was a formative experience for me as a writer.
So when's the first time you went from telling stories for fun to thinking, oh, maybe one day I will be a writer?
So that would be 6th grade. And in 6th grade, I was obsessed with the most handsome actor in Hollywood at the time, who, depending on the age of those who are listening or watching us right now, may seem really old now. But it was Matt Damon. Totally obsessed. Don't know why, because all of his movies were pretty adult, and I was only in 6th grade, but I'm totally obsessed. And I knew that he was a screenwriter as well as an actor. And so I came up with this idea for a book, which was about a girl who is an Olympian horse rider, and she and her horse both get cancer at the same time right before the Olympics, but are determined to go to the Olympics despite the fact that they have cancer. It was very high drama, very high stakes. And I wrote it up, and it was probably 100 pages. And I sent it to Matt Damon, and I told him that this is my story, and I want you to make it into a movie. Never heard anything. Not even a form letter from his publicist to be thank you for reaching out, which in retrospect I feel is kind of cruel. I laid my heart bare for this man. But that was a really cool thing anyway, because as a 6th grader, writing something that's 100 pages, that's intense. And so that, I think, was the first time that I thought to myself, I can write a book, and someday I'm going to do this for a living.
Many questions to ask following that. One, what's your favorite Matt Damon role?
Oh, man. I mean, I know it's a throwback, but Good Will Hunting still gets me. every time. It's that Southie accent.
This is a story I don't believe I've told on the podcast because it's extremely embarrassing. But I had started off writing screenplays for films in college, and we would shoot some of them. And we were shooting a very serious, very important, high-minded drama that I'd written. Yep. Oh my gosh, would have won all the awards had we finished it. Anyway, as we're filming a scene and the actors are performing it, they turn to me and they say, "Isn't this that scene from Good Will Hunting?" And I realized that even though I'd only seen the movie like I think once or twice, I was like, "Oh my gosh, I think it is not word for word, but extremely close to stealing a scene from Good Will Hunting." And I've always been suspicious of myself ever since because it had not been intentional. It's been, it was a really well-written scene that I found a place for.
Yeah, so that's like one of my greatest fears as a writer is that like unintentional plagiarism. And I also have a story in that vein, which was that with the Ethan I was before, in the first chapter, there's a line, or there was a line, where Ethan, the main character, says, "You can tell a lot about a person by their shoes." And that was a line that was in there, like, in the arc, so in the very, like, penultimate version of the book. And my husband, Aki, was reading it, and he said, "You stole this line." And I was like, "From where?" And he said, "From Forrest Gump. You stole it from Forrest Gump. Like, you can tell a lot about a person by their shoes. These were my magic shoes. Mama said they would take me anywhere." And I was like, oh man, like word for word from Forrest Gump. So I'm eternally grateful to him because I took it out of the book at the last second, but I'm sure a lot of other readers would have recognized that and would have just thought, the gall of this woman.
Well, I'm glad it was cut and you didn't. I never heard from Matt Damon, but you might have gotten a letter from the Tom Hanks estate. Who knows?
I know. And gosh, like no one wants to piss off Tom Hanks.
God, no, he's an American hero. Why would you do that? So 100 pages about the girl and her horse, and that will get you, even though you never hear back from Matt Damon, that lets you know that, hey, there's something here. You're definitely going to be a writer. Were you a big reader as well?
Oh, yeah. Reading was my safe place, as I suspect it was for many middle grade writers. It was like a sacred space for me. It was just, it was everything. I could disappear into a book in a way that, at that time of my life, in a way that even now, as an adult, I find hard to do. Whereas at that age, it was so immersive and so real for me. And I'm sorry, it just started pouring. So I don't know if you can hear the rain pouring on my roof. But yeah, I read all the time. I'm sure you did as well.
I'm sorry?
I said, I'm sure you did as well.
Most of the time, when I wasn't rotting my brain with video games. And then from there, you eventually go on to become an educator. Were you thinking that you were going to be a teacher and that was the main goal, or was it always, I'm going to be a writer, and until then I'll teach until I win all the awards and make all the money and Matt Damon stars in my novel? Right.
Well, I mean, that is the natural trajectory for all middle grade authors. As you can see from my mansion. It's a hard question because as a teacher, I don't know, have you ever been an educator?
Substitute teacher and teaching some writing classes, but never full time.
So, I mean, I think you'll probably still feel some of this. Like, it's a job where you have to be so in the moment, and so like your goals are not focused on you, they're focused on like your students and meeting their needs and like trying to figure out what your goals are for them. That when I was in the classroom, I would say that writing did take a back seat, and I didn't have the energy to like think so long term about what I was going to do. I think in the back of my head, like I always had that dream of being a writer, but there was not like a 5-year plan and a 10-year plan. The reason actually that I left teaching was that my husband, who was from Finland, he was in the US on a green card visa, and his green card was about to expire. And so we had the choice between getting green card married, which I was not ready to do, or moving to the UK, where he had gotten a job offer and I could get a visa as an unmarried partner. And so that's what we did. So we moved to the UK, and when we got there, I didn't know a soul. I had like no social life. I had no job, no way to get a job. But I had an idea for a book, and I started to write it. And that was the moment where I truly, seriously thought, like, let me give this a shot and see if I can make this a career, because I don't have anything to lose, I'm not doing anything else.